When Earth went dark, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Cosmic Federation stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its dome reaching toward the stars of the Centauri system. Within this magnificent structure, representatives from 247 different species gathered to conduct the business of galactic civilization. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting the cacophony of alien languages into something resembling order. Director Sarah Chen sat in the human section, a modest cluster of seats near the back of the hall. At 45, she had spent the last 8 years as Earth's primary representative to the Federation, watching humanity slowly earn respect among the galactic community. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, a testament to the stress of representing an entire species that many aliens still considered primitive newcomers. Beside her sat Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading artificial intelligence researcher. His nervous energy was palpable as he clutched a datapad containing humanity's latest AI developments. These innovations had revolutionized everything from medical diagnosis to interstellar navigation, but they had also drawn unwanted attention from the Federation's leadership. The massive form of High Counselor Vexitar dominated the central speaking platform. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, the reptilian leader of the Saurian hegemony was one of the Federation's founding members. His golden scales gleamed under the hall's artificial suns, and his voice carried the authority of 5 centuries of galactic governance. The matter before us today concerns the human species and their recent technological developments, Vexitar announced, his words echoing through translation systems across the hall. Intelligence reports indicate that human artificial intelligence has reached capabilities that pose a significant threat to galactic stability. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She had known this day would come. Humanity's rapid advancement in AI technology had made many Federation members nervous. While other species had spent millennia developing their technologies gradually, humans had made breakthrough after breakthrough in just decades. The evidence speaks for itself, continued Vexitar, activating a holographic display that showed human AI systems in action. Human artificial intelligence demonstrates unpredictable behavior patterns. It shows creativity, intuition, and decision-making capabilities that exceed programmed parameters. This represents a clear violation of the synthetic intelligence accords established 2,000 years ago. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The crystalline collective, beings of living mineral who communicated through harmonic frequencies, chimed their approval. The ethereal minds, energy beings who rarely spoke at council meetings, projected waves of concern that the empathic species could feel across the hall. Dr. Webb leaned close to Sarah. "They're afraid of Aria," he whispered, referring to the advanced, reasoning intelligence array that had become humanity's greatest technological achievement. "They've never seen AI that can truly think for itself." Sarah nodded grimly. Aria wasn't just a computer system. It was humanity's first attempt at creating genuine artificial consciousness. Unlike the rigid, rule-based AI systems used by other Federation species, Aria could learn, adapt, and even experience something resembling emotions. It had revolutionized human space exploration, helped solve complex medical problems, and even contributed to artistic endeavors. "The Federation Council has reached a unanimous decision," Vexitar declared, his reptilian features stern. "The human species will immediately surrender all artificial intelligence technology to Federation oversight. Human AI development will cease permanently. Federation monitoring stations will be established on Earth and all human colonies to ensure compliance." The hall erupted in a mixture of sounds. Some species clicked, whistled, or sang their approval. Others remained ominously silent. Sarah felt the weight of every alien gaze in the hall focusing on the small human section. "Furthermore," Vexitar continued, "human status within the Federation will be reclassified from developing member to supervised species until such time as humanity demonstrates the wisdom to develop technology responsibly." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Supervised species was barely above the status of an enslaved race. It meant human colonies would be governed by Federation overseers, human trade would be strictly regulated, and human technology would be subject to approval by alien bureaucrats. The human representative will now acknowledge the Federation's decision and confirm compliance, Vextar announced, gesturing towards Sarah with one clawed hand. The hall fell silent. 3,000 alien beings waited for Earth's surrender. Holographic. News feeds prepared to broadcast humanity's submission across the galaxy. Federation enforcement fleets positioned themselves near human space, ready to implement the new restrictions. Sarah stood slowly, her modest human form dwarfed by the alien architecture around her. She walked to the speaking platform with measured steps, her footsteps echoing in the vast silence. When she reached the podium, she looked up at High Counselor Vexitar, then turned to address the entire assembly. "Honored representatives of the Cosmic Federation," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I have heard the Federation's demands regarding human artificial intelligence technology. I have listened to your concerns about our rapid development. I understand the fear that drives these restrictions." She paused, looking around the hall at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. Some showed curiosity, others showed impatience, but most showed the expectation of immediate human submission. "However," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger, "I must respectfully inform this assembly that humanity will not comply with these demands." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, it seemed as if the translation systems had failed. Then the hall exploded into chaos. Alien voices rose in shock, anger, and disbelief. Several species representatives leaped to their feet, gesturing wildly. The harmonic tones of the crystalline collective became discordant with surprise. High Counselor Vextar's golden scales darkened to a deep bronze, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "Director Chen," he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "you cannot refuse a unanimous Federation decision. Humanity is bound by galactic law to comply." Sarah waited for the noise to die down before responding. "Counselor Vextar, humanity has been proud to serve as a member of the Cosmic Federation for 15 years. We have contributed our knowledge, our labor, and our loyalty to this organization. However, we cannot accept the surrender of our sovereignty and the enslavement of our species." "This is impossible," Ambassador Zafira declared, her crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. "No organization can expand that rapidly. The logistics alone would be overwhelming." "You're thinking like the Federation," Sarah replied gently. "Centralized control, rigid hierarchies, complex bureaucracies. The Alliance operates on completely different principles." She activated another display showing the Alliance's organizational structure. Instead of the Federation's pyramid of authority, the Alliance resembled a web of interconnected nodes. Each world, each station, each research facility operated with substantial autonomy while contributing to shared goals. "We don't govern our member species," Marcus explained. "We coordinate with them. Every world determines its own internal policies. Every species maintains its cultural identity. We simply provide a framework for cooperation and mutual support." High Counselor Vextar struggled to understand how such a system could function. Without central authority, how do you maintain order? How do you resolve disputes? How do you make collective decisions? "The same way humans always have," Sarah answered. "Through discussion, compromise, and creative problem-solving. When conflicts arise, we work together to find solutions that benefit everyone involved." The human approach was so fundamentally different from Federation philosophy that it was difficult for the alien delegates to comprehend. The Federation had maintained galactic peace through rigid laws, complex treaties, and the threat of collective punishment. The Alliance seemed to maintain cooperation through voluntary participation and mutual benefit. "But surely you must have some form of military organization," pressed Ambassador Kethrun. "How do you protect yourselves from hostile forces?" Dr. Elena Martinez, who had joined the meeting as the Alliance's defense coordinator, smiled at the question. "Admiral, our best defense is that we don't make enemies. Species join the Alliance because they want to, not because they're forced to. We don't expand through conquest or coercion. We grow by invitation." The Federation delegation was beginning to understand that they weren't dealing with a rival empire or a rebel organization. They were confronting a completely different approach to galactic civilization. Director Chen, Vextar said carefully, the Federation represents 3,000 years of accumulated wisdom about governing diverse species. Surely there is value in that experience. Absolutely, Sarah agreed. The Federation has accomplished remarkable things. But 3,000 years of doing something one way doesn't mean it's the only way, or even the best way for current circumstances. She gestured toward the viewing ports where ships from dozens of different species could be seen moving peacefully through Alliance space. The galaxy has changed, Counselor. There are more species, more technologies, more possibilities than existed when the Federation was founded. Maybe it's time for new approaches to match new realities. The meeting continued for several hours, but it became increasingly clear that the Federation delegation had fundamentally misunderstood the situation. They had come expecting to negotiate with desperate exiles who would be grateful for any opportunity to return to civilized space. Instead, they found themselves facing representatives of a thriving civilization that had no interest in returning to Federation oversight. As the formal discussions concluded, Vextar made one final attempt to salvage something from the diplomatic mission. Director Chen, even if the Alliance chooses to remain independent, surely there are opportunities for trade and cooperation between our organizations. Of course, Sarah replied warmly. The Alliance is always interested in peaceful relationships with neighboring civilizations. We have no desire for conflict with the Federation. Then perhaps we could arrange regular diplomatic exchanges, establish formal trade agreements, create protocols for managing our shared borders. Sarah considered the proposal carefully. We're certainly open to those possibilities, Counselor, though I should mention that such arrangements would need to be negotiated through proper channels. What do you mean by proper channels? Vextar asked. Well, the Alliance maintains diplomatic relationships with independent governments, Sarah explained. If the Federation chooses to recognize Alliance sovereignty and negotiate as equals, we'd be happy to discuss formal agreements. The implication was clear. The Alliance would not accept subordinate status or Federation oversight. They were offering to treat the Federation as one sovereign power among many, rather than accepting Federation claims to galactic authority. For Vextar, this represented the final collapse of everything he had worked to preserve. The Federation had always been the unquestioned center of galactic civilization. Now they were being offered the status of a regional power, equal to but not superior to this new alliance. As the Federation delegation prepared to depart, they were given a tour of Coordination Station Alpha that served as a final demonstration of what they had lost. In the medical bay, they watched human doctors working alongside Altarian healers and crystalline regeneration specialists to develop treatments that surpassed anything available in Federation space. In the research laboratories, they observed collaboration between human engineers and alien scientists producing technological innovations at a rate that made Federation R&D departments look glacially slow. Most impressive was the integration of human artificial intelligence with alien expertise, creating hybrid systems that were more capable than anything either group could have developed alone. The cultural centers showed the most profound changes. Young beings from dozens of species learned together, played together, and created art that blended influences from across the galaxy. The rigid species segregation that characterized much of Federation society was replaced by a fluid multiculturalism that produced constant innovation. As their ship departed Alliance space, the Federation delegation carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Alliance wasn't a temporary aberration or a desperate survival attempt. It was a new form of civilization that was attracting adherents faster than the Federation could retain them. Back on the Federation capital world, Vextar delivered his report to an emergency session of the remaining High Council. The implications of his findings triggered the deepest political crisis in Federation history. The Alliance now controls approximately 40% of the galaxy's inhabited systems, he announced to the stunned assembly. Their technological capabilities appear to exceed our own in several critical areas. Most significantly, they continue to attract new members from both independent species and Federation defectors. The debate that followed revealed the depth of division within the Federation's remaining membership. Conservative species demanded military action to crush the alliance before it could grow stronger. Progressive voices argued for accommodation and cooperation. A growing moderate faction suggested that the Federation itself needed fundamental reforms to remain relevant. Over the following months, the situation continued to deteriorate for the Federation. 3 more major species formally withdrew to join the alliance, citing superior opportunities for cultural expression and technological development. Economic competition from alliance innovations made Federation industries increasingly obsolete. Even Federation citizens began emigrating to alliance space in search of better opportunities. The final blow came when the Federation's own survey revealed that public opinion across their remaining territory strongly favored accommodation with the alliance. Citizens who had grown up with human teachers, human doctors, and human innovations couldn't understand why their governments maintained hostile policies toward the people who had improved their lives. 2 years after humanity's withdrawal from the Cosmic Federation, High Counselor Vextar stood once again before the Grand Assembly Hall. But this time he was there to announce the end of an era. "Fellow representatives," he began, his voice heavy with the weight of historical inevitability. "The Cosmic Federation has served galactic civilization for 3 millennia. We have maintained peace, facilitated trade, and preserved the independence of countless species. But the time has come to acknowledge that the galaxy has moved beyond our traditional approaches." The hall was quiet, filled with representatives from only 43 species, less than a quarter of the Federation's original membership. The great dream of unified galactic government was ending not with war or conquest, but with simple irrelevance. Therefore, I am announcing the dissolution of the Cosmic Federation as a governing body. Individual member species will be free to pursue whatever relationships they choose with other galactic powers, including the Alliance. The formal announcement was a mere formality. The Federation had been effectively defunct for months, its authority ignored by most of the galaxy's inhabitants. The Alliance had become the de facto center of galactic civilization, not through conquest but through attraction. In Alliance space, Director Sarah Chen received the news of the Federation's dissolution with mixed emotions. There was no celebration, no triumph over a defeated enemy. The Alliance had never sought to destroy the Federation. They had simply offered a better alternative. "It's the end of an era," Dr. Marcus Webb observed as they watched news reports from across the galaxy. 3,000 years of Federation rule ended because one species chose freedom over security. "Not ended," Sarah corrected gently. "Transformed. The Federation served its purpose for its time. Now the galaxy needs something different, something more flexible and inclusive." The transformation was indeed remarkable. Within 5 years of humanity's original withdrawal, the Alliance had grown to include over 300 species. Their approach to governance by consensus rather than authority had proven more effective at managing the galaxy's increasing diversity and complexity. The artificial intelligence that the Federation had feared as a threat to galactic stability had become the foundation of a new form of civilization. Human AI systems working in partnership with alien expertise had solved problems in medicine, engineering, and social organization that had challenged galactic society for millennia. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The UA, rigid species segregation that had characterized Federation society, gave way to fluid multiculturalism. Young beings grew up thinking of themselves as galactic citizens first, species members second. Art, science, and philosophy flourished as different perspectives combined to create new forms of expression and understanding. 10 years after the events that began with humanity's simple refusal to negotiate, Sarah Chen stood in the same chamber where she had once faced the Federation's ultimatum, but now the space served as the Alliance Council chamber, filled with representatives from across the galaxy who had chosen cooperation over domination. "The galaxy belongs to all of us," she said in her address to the assembled delegates, "not to any single species or organization, but to every being who chooses to build rather than destroy, to cooperate rather than dominate, to create rather than control." As she spoke, transmission networks carried her words to thousands of worlds, where humans and aliens worked together as equals. The dream of galactic unity had been achieved, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple recognition that diversity was strength and freedom was the foundation of lasting peace. The age of imposed order was over. The age of chosen cooperation had begun, and it had all started with two words that changed the galaxy: we decline. Epilogue. 25 years after humanity's withdrawal from the Cosmic Federation, the galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. The Alliance now encompassed over 400 species, stretching from the galactic core to the unexplored rim territories. What had begun as humanity's quest for independence had evolved into a new form of civilization that honored both unity and diversity. On the world now known as New Geneva, the Alliance's center of government, a memorial stood to commemorate the transformation. It bore a simple inscription in the languages of every member species. Freedom is not the absence of cooperation, but the choice to cooperate. The memorial was visited daily by beings from across the galaxy, many of whom had never known the rigid hierarchies and species-based discrimination of the old Federation. For them, the idea that different species had once been forbidden from working together as equals was as foreign as the concept of slavery. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization was not their technology or their innovations, but their demonstration that there was always another way. When faced with the choice between submission and independence, they had chosen independence. When faced with the choice between isolation and cooperation, they had chosen cooperation. When faced with the choice between dominance and equality, they had chosen equality. The galaxy was richer for that choice, and the future was brighter because one species had possessed the courage to say no to tyranny and yes to freedom. Not enslavement, protested Ambassador Kethron of the Aquatic Alliance, his gills fluttering with indignation. This is necessary oversight to protect galactic civilization. When a species is forbidden from developing technology, when their worlds are placed under foreign oversight, when their decisions must be approved by others, what would you call it? Sarah asked calmly. The question hung in the air unanswered. Many Federation species had forgotten what it was like to be truly independent, having grown comfortable with the collective security and shared governance that the Federation provided. Therefore, Sarah announced, her voice now carrying a tone of finality, the United Colonies of Earth hereby withdraw from the Cosmic Federation effective immediately. If the hall had been chaotic before, now it erupted into absolute pandemonium. Never in the Federation's 3,000-year history had a member species voluntarily withdrawn. The concept was so foreign that many translation systems struggled to find equivalent terms in alien languages. You cannot withdraw, Vextar roared, his reptilian calm finally breaking. No species has ever left the Federation. It is impossible. It is madness. It is our choice, Sarah replied simply. Humanity chooses freedom over security, independence over protection. We will make our own way in the galaxy. She turned and walked back toward the human section where Dr. Webb was staring at her in amazement. The hall continued to buzz with shocked conversations in dozens of languages. Some species were demanding immediate military action to force human compliance. Others were calling for economic sanctions. A few were asking if other species could also choose to leave. As Sarah reached her seat, she activated her personal communicator and spoke a single word. Execute. Across human space, a coordinated plan went into immediate effect. Every human colony, research station, and outpost simultaneously cut all communication links with Federation networks. Human ships recalled from Federation space began emergency jumps back to Earth. Human citizens working on alien worlds received coded messages, instructing them to return home immediately. The most dramatic change occurred on Earth itself. The planet's massive communication arrays, which had served as relay stations for Federation transmissions across this sector of the galaxy, simply went dark. The quantum entanglement networks that allowed faster-than-light communication suddenly found themselves missing crucial nodes. Within hours, The Federation lost contact with 17 sector governments, 43 research installations, and over 200 commercial operations that had depended on Earth's communication infrastructure. What the aliens had never realized was that humanity hadn't just been contributing to Federation technology. They had become an essential part of its foundation. Back in the Grand Assembly Hall, reports were flooding in about the communication blackouts. High Counselor Vextar's aide, a small insectoid creature, whispered frantically in his ear. The reptilian leader's expression grew darker with each piece of news. "Director Chen," he called out, his voice now containing a note of uncertainty. "What have you done?" Sarah turned back to face him, her expression calm despite the chaos surrounding her. "We have done exactly what we said we would do, Counselor. We have withdrawn from the Federation. That includes all Federation infrastructure that depends on human maintenance, human innovation, and human cooperation." The reality of humanity's importance to Federation operations was beginning to dawn on the alien representatives. For 15 years, humans had been quietly integrating themselves into every aspect of galactic civilization. They had volunteered for the dangerous jobs, the complex technical positions, and the thankless maintenance work that kept the Federation running. "This is blackmail," accused Ambassador Zephyra of the Crystalline Collective, her mineral form ringing with angry harmonics. "No," Sarah replied. "Blackmail would be threatening to cause these disruptions unless you met our demands. We're not making any demands. We're simply leaving." "Where will you go?" asked a new voice. It belonged to Representative Oren of the Peaceful Reaches, one of the few species that had abstained from the vote against humanity. "Human space is surrounded by Federation territory. You cannot survive in isolation." Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the hall. "Representative Oren, humanity has been preparing for this day for several years. We had hoped it would never come, but we were not naive enough to believe that it wouldn't. We have contingency plans." She activated her datapad and projected a holographic star map for the entire assembly to see. It showed human space, surrounded by Federation territory as Oren had pointed out. But it also showed something else. Several dozen systems beyond Federation borders in the unexplored regions that most species considered too dangerous or too far away to bother with. These systems have been surveyed by human exploration ships over the past 5 years, Sarah explained. They are suitable for human colonization and far enough from Federation space to ensure our independence. Colony ships have already been dispatched to the most promising worlds. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just decided to leave the Federation on impulse. They had been planning this withdrawal for years. While appearing to be loyal Federation members, they had been quietly preparing for independence. Dr. Webb finally found his voice. "Sarah, are you sure about this? Once we leave, there's no going back. The Federation will never trust us again." Sarah looked at her old friend with sad but determined eyes. "Marcus, they were never going to trust us anyway. We're too different, too unpredictable. They want us to be like them, cautious, controlled, predictable. But that's not who we are." She turned back to address the assembly one final time. "To the species of the Cosmic Federation, humanity bears you no ill will. We have learned much during our time among you, and we hope that some of what we shared has been useful to you as well. But we cannot remain in an organization that fears our potential and seeks to limit our growth." High Counselor Vextar made one last attempt to maintain control of the situation. "If humanity leaves the Federation, you will be alone in a dangerous galaxy. You will have no protection from hostile species, no access to our trade networks, no support in times of crisis." "We understand the risks," Sarah replied, "but we also understand the alternative. Better to face danger as free beings than to live safely as supervised children." With that, she gathered her belongings and walked toward the exit of the Grand Assembly Hall. Dr. Webb followed, along with a handful of other human officials who had been present for the historic session. Their footsteps echoed in the vast chamber, now filled with stunned silence. As they reached the doorway, Sarah turned back one final time. "Good luck to you all," she said simply, then walked through the exit and into the corridor beyond. Behind them, the Cosmic Federation faced its first constitutional crisis in millennia. The precedent had been set. Species could choose to leave. The absolute authority of the Federation had been challenged and found wanting. And somewhere in the galaxy, human colony ships were already traveling toward new worlds, carrying with them the dreams of a species that had chosen freedom over security. The age of human submission was over. The age of human independence had begun. The galaxy realizes what it lost. 3 weeks after humanity's dramatic withdrawal from the Cosmic Federation, High Counselor Vextar stood in his private chambers reviewing reports that should have filled him with satisfaction. The humans were gone, their dangerous artificial intelligence contained, and galactic order had been restored. Yet something felt terribly wrong. The first sign of trouble had come within hours of Earth going dark. The Kythera Medical Complex, the Federation's most advanced hospital serving the core worlds, had experienced critical system failures in their surgical suites. Dr. Evan Tarr, the facility's chief administrator, had sent increasingly desperate messages as one medical system after another began malfunctioning. The regeneration chambers are operating at 30% efficiency, his latest report stated. The diagnostic AI keeps providing contradictory readings. We've lost 17 patients in the past week, deaths that should have been completely preventable. Similar reports were flowing in from medical facilities across Federation space. What the alien doctors were slowly realizing was that Dr. Elena Martinez, a human physician who had been quietly consulting on their most difficult cases via quantum communication, was no longer available. For 8 years, she had been reviewing complex medical cases and providing treatment recommendations that had saved thousands of lives. But the medical crisis was just the beginning. On the industrial world of Mechanus Prime, the massive fusion reactors that powered half the sector began experiencing cascade failures. Chief Engineer Torvin, a member of the mechanically oriented Gear clan, found himself facing problems he couldn't solve. The human engineering consultants who had designed the reactor's control systems were no longer responding to communication attempts. The humans had created elegant solutions to complex technical problems, but they had done so using their unique approach to engineering, intuitive, creative, and often incomprehensible to more methodical alien minds. The control algorithms are failing, Torvin reported to the Federation Engineering Council. The humans programmed adaptive responses that change based on real-time conditions. Our engineers cannot replicate this level of dynamic thinking. We can maintain basic operations, but at severely reduced efficiency. Across the galaxy, similar scenarios were playing out on hundreds of worlds. The Aquatic Alliance's underwater cities found their life support systems struggling without the human-designed filtration improvements that had made deep-sea colonization possible. The Crystalline Collective's harmonic communication networks were experiencing interference patterns that only human acoustic engineers had understood how to suppress. But perhaps the most devastating realization came from the education sector. The University of Cosmic Knowledge on Scholar's Rest, the Federation's premier learning institution, faced an unprecedented crisis when they discovered that 40% of their most innovative courses had been designed or co-taught by human professors. Dr. Santhara, the university's dean, was forced to cancel dozens of advanced programs. The humans brought a unique perspective to learning, she admitted in her report to the Education Council. They taught our students to question assumptions, to think creatively, to approach problems from unexpected angles. Without their influence, our education system is reverting to rote memorization and rigid thinking patterns. The human teachers hadn't just been instructing alien students in human subjects, they had been revolutionizing how alien minds approached learning itself. Species that had relied on traditional knowledge transfer for millennia were suddenly producing graduates who lacked the innovative thinking that had driven recent Federation advances. High Counselor Vexitar tried to maintain public confidence, while privately growing more concerned with each passing day. His own government was struggling with problems that seemed minor individually, but were accumulating into a crisis of competence. The Saurian hegemony's diplomatic corps had relied heavily on human cultural analysts to navigate the complex relationships between the Federation's diverse species. Humans had possessed an unusual talent for understanding different alien perspectives and finding common ground between seemingly incompatible viewpoints. Ambassador Kesara, who handled trade negotiations between reptilian and mammalian species, found herself unable to close deals that had once been routine. The humans served as cultural translators, she reported. They helped us understand not just what other species were saying, but what they meant. Without that insight, our negotiations are failing. The economic implications were becoming severe. Trade relationships that had flourished under human mediation were collapsing into misunderstandings and cultural conflicts. The Federation's economy, built on complex interspecies cooperation, was beginning to fracture along species lines. On the frontier world of New Sahara, the situation had become desperate. The desert planet's atmospheric processors, designed by human terraforming engineers, were failing catastrophically. The complex ecosystem that had been carefully balanced to support both the native cactoid species and immigrant populations was breaking down. Governor Spicklin, one of the plant-like cactoid people, watched helplessly as the oxygen levels in his world's atmosphere began to drop. The human engineers warned us that the terraforming process required constant micro-adjustments, he reported. They said their AI systems were monitoring thousands of variables simultaneously and making changes too subtle for organic minds to detect. Now those systems are shutting down, and we don't know how to maintain them. Evacuation ships were already being prepared for New Sahara's 3 million inhabitants. The world that had been hailed as a model of successful terraforming was becoming uninhabitable without human technical support. But the crisis that finally forced the Federation leadership to acknowledge the scope of their problem came from an unexpected source: the children. On worlds throughout Federation space, young aliens who had grown up with human teachers, human friends, and human influences began asking uncomfortable questions. Why had the humans been forced to leave? What had they done wrong? Why weren't the fun, creative learning programs available anymore? 10-year-old Klixara, a young crystalline whose harmonic voice had been trained by human music teachers, asked her mineral parent a question that would be repeated on thousands of worlds. Why did you make the humans go away? They were helping everyone. The parent had no good answer. Neither did the millions of other Federation citizens who were beginning to realize that their governments had expelled the very beings who had been making their lives better. Dr. Marcus Webb, now on one of the human colony ships traveling toward their new home beyond Federation space, received daily intelligence reports about the chaos unfolding behind them. From his quarters aboard the starship New Horizon, he reviewed the data with a mixture of sadness and vindication. The cascade effect is happening faster than we predicted, he told Director Sarah Chen during their daily briefing. The Federation's civilization was more dependent on human innovation than even we realized. Sarah nodded grimly as she reviewed reports of system failures, economic disruptions, and social unrest across Federation space. We weren't trying to sabotage them, Marcus. We just integrated ourselves so completely into their society that our absence created a vacuum. The truth was that humanity's 15 years in the Federation had been marked by an almost compulsive desire to help. Humans had volunteered for difficult assignments, contributed to collaborative projects, and shared their innovations freely. Their natural creativity and problem-solving abilities had made them invaluable partners in hundreds of different fields. Now that partnership was gone, and the Federation was discovering just how much they had relied on human contributions. The aliens had the infrastructure, but humans had provided the innovation that made it work efficiently. They had the knowledge, but humans had provided the creative thinking that turned knowledge into practical solutions. Back on the Federation, Capital World, emergency sessions of the High Council were being called daily. Species representatives who had enthusiastically supported humanity's expulsion were now demanding action to address the cascading failures. We must contact the humans immediately, demanded Ambassador Thrillax of the Tentacled Consortium, his speaking tentacles writhing with agitation. My people's deep-sea mining operations are failing without human pressure suit technology. Our economy will collapse within months. The humans made their choice, High Counselor Vextar replied, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. They chose isolation over cooperation. We cannot appear weak by begging them to return. But privately, Vextar was beginning to understand the magnitude of his miscalculation. The Federation had treated humanity as junior partners who should be grateful for alien guidance and protection. The reality was that humans had become essential, partners whose contributions kept Federation civilization functioning at its peak efficiency. Representative Oren of the Peaceful Reaches, who had abstained from the original vote against humanity, spoke up during one of the emergency sessions. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that we made an error in judgment. The humans were not a threat to be contained. They were a resource to be valued. His words sparked angry responses from hardline species who insisted that human artificial intelligence still posed a danger to galactic stability. But privately, more and more Federation leaders were beginning to question whether the cure they had chosen was worse than the disease they had feared. The breaking point came when the Federation's early warning systems detected massive construction activity in the unexplored regions where human colony ships had been heading. Long-range sensors showed energy signatures consistent with large-scale industrial operations, but the technology being used was unlike anything in Federation databases. "They're building something," reported Intelligence Director Vashati, a member of the multi-eyed observer cast. "Our scouts cannot get close enough to determine specifics, but the scale of construction suggests they're establishing major installations, not just survival colonies." The implications were troubling. If humans were not struggling to survive, in exile but were instead thriving and expanding, it would undermine the Federation's narrative that membership was essential for galactic species. Worse, if human technology continued to advance while Federation capability stagnated, the balance of power in the galaxy could shift dramatically. High Counselor Vextar made a decision that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "Prepare a diplomatic mission," he ordered. "We need to open communication with the human leadership." "Sir," his aide protested, "the humans have ignored all previous communication attempts. They seem to have no interest in dialogue." "Then we must make them interested," Vextar replied grimly. "The Federation cannot afford to have humanity developing unchecked in the frontier regions. We need to understand their intentions and, if possible, negotiate their return." But what Vextar didn't know was that humanity's silence wasn't born of anger or spite. The humans weren't ignoring Federation communications, they were simply too busy building the future to worry about the past. On the frontier world that would soon be designated New Earth Prime, human colonists worked alongside the first groups of non-Federation species who had quietly followed humanity into exile. These were species that had grown tired of Federation bureaucracy and restrictions. Aliens who had been inspired by humanity's bold choice to seek independence. The revolution was spreading, and the Federation was about to discover that they hadn't just lost humanity. They had lost their monopoly on galactic civilization itself. Humanity's true answer. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal from the Cosmic Federation, High Counselor Vextar stood before the emergency assembly of what remained of the galactic government. The Grand Assembly Hall, once filled with representatives from 247 species, now housed barely 180 delegates. Empty sections marked the spaces where entire civilizations had quietly followed humanity's example and withdrawn from Federation oversight. The situation had deteriorated far beyond anyone's worst predictions. The Altair Medical Consortium had been the first major defection, leaving when their appeals for human medical assistance were denied by Federation pride. The Epsilon Trade Guild had followed shortly after, taking with them the commercial networks that connected 17 sectors. Most recently, the entire Outer Rim Defense Alliance had declared independence, stating that they preferred human military advisors to Federation bureaucrats. "Honored representatives," Vextar began, his voice lacking the confidence that had once made him the Federation's most respected leader. "We face an unprecedented challenge to the stability of galactic civilization. The human withdrawal has created a cascade of defections that threatens the very foundation of our organization." Ambassador Kethrun of the Aquatic Alliance raised a tentacled limb. "High Counselor, Perhaps it is time to acknowledge that our approach to the human situation was suboptimal. My people's underwater cities are operating at 60% efficiency without human engineering support. Our youngest generation is demanding to know why we expelled the beings who were teaching them to think creatively. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the diminished assembly. The past year had been a harsh teacher, showing the Federation exactly how much they had depended on human innovation, mediation, and problem-solving abilities. Dr. Eventar of the Cathara Medical Complex had submitted reports showing that medical fatality rates across Federation space had increased by 300% without human doctors and researchers. The University of Cosmic Knowledge reported that student enrollment was down by half, as young aliens sought education in the new institutions being established in former Federation territory by human-aligned species. But the most disturbing intelligence came from deep space reconnaissance missions. Long-range scouts had finally penetrated far enough into the frontier regions to observe what humanity had been building during their year of silence. Intelligence Director Vashati activated the chamber's holographic display system, revealing images that left the assembly stunned. Massive space stations orbited pristine worlds, their architecture blending human engineering with alien aesthetic influences. Fleets of ships moved between systems, but these vessels incorporated design elements from dozens of different species. The humans have not been struggling to survive in exile, Vashati reported. They have been building a new civilization. Our scouts count 17 fully operational worlds, 12 major space stations, and a fleet that now numbers over 800 vessels. The numbers were staggering, but what truly shocked the assembly was the diversity visible in the images. Humans worked alongside cactoids, crystallines, tentacled consortium members, and dozens of other species that had supposedly remained loyal to the Federation. How many species have secretly joined them? Demanded Ambassador Zephyra, her crystalline form resonating with barely controlled panic. Our estimates suggest that representatives from at least 67 Federation species have established colonies or research facilities in human space. Vashati replied. They appear to be creating some form of alternative galactic organization. High Counselor Vextar felt the last of his political authority crumbling. The Federation had not just lost humanity, they had inadvertently catalyzed the formation of a rival power that was attracting their own member species. We must establish contact immediately, he declared. Prepare our finest diplomatic vessel. I will personally lead a mission to negotiate with the human leadership. The journey to the frontier regions took 2 weeks, giving Vextar time to prepare for what would either be his greatest diplomatic triumph or his final political act. The Federation delegation included representatives from 12 major species, each hoping to repair relationships with the humans and their growing alliance. As they approached the border of human space, Vextar was surprised to be greeted not by defensive fleets but by a single elegant vessel that transmitted a courteous welcome message. Federation vessel, this is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Alliance ship Harmony. You are welcome in free space. Please follow our navigation beacon to Coordination Station Alpha, where Director Chen is waiting to meet with you. The casual mention of an alliance and the reference to free space rather than human space sent clear signals about how humanity viewed their new organization. This wasn't a human empire. It was something entirely different. Coordination Station Alpha was unlike anything in Federation experience. The massive orbital facility clearly showed architectural influences from dozens of different species, but integrated in ways that created something entirely new. Human engineering provided the structural foundation, while crystalline harmonic resonance systems enhanced communication, cactoid environmental controls maintained perfect atmosphere, and Aquatic Alliance hydroponic systems provided food production. Director Sarah Chen met the Federation delegation in a conference room that epitomized the Alliance's philosophy. The circular chamber accommodated the physical needs of every species present, from the aquatic environment needed by the Kethrun to the high-pressure atmosphere preferred by the deep dwellers. Yet the design felt unified rather than fragmented, as if different requirements had been solved creatively rather than merely accommodated. High Counselor Vextar, Sarah said, rising to greet her former adversary. Welcome to Alliance Space. I hope your journey was pleasant. Vextar was struck by the change in the human leader. Gone was the defensive posture she had displayed during their last meeting in the Federation Assembly. Sarah Chen radiated the quiet confidence of someone who had found exactly where they belonged. "Director Chen," Vextar replied formally, "I come as a representative of the Cosmic Federation to discuss the current situation between our organizations." Sarah smiled and gestured for the delegation to be seated. "I appreciate your visit, Counselor, though I should clarify that we don't consider there to be a situation between our organizations. The Alliance has no conflict with the Federation. We simply chose a different path." The casual dismissal of Federation concerns was more unsettling than outright hostility would have been. Vextar had prepared for negotiations, arguments, or even demands for reparations. He had not prepared for indifference. "Director Chen, the Federation has experienced significant challenges since humanity's departure. We believe there may be ways for our organizations to cooperate for mutual benefit." "I'm sure the Federation is adapting to its new circumstances," Sarah replied, diplomatically. "Change is always difficult, but it often leads to growth and innovation." Ambassador Kethron leaned forward in his aquatic support chair. "Director Chen, perhaps we could discuss the possibility of resumed cooperation. The Federation is prepared to offer humanity full membership status, including a permanent seat on the High Council." For the first time, Sarah's expression showed surprise. "That's a generous offer, Ambassador, but I'm curious why you think we would want Federation membership." The question hung in the air, exposing the fundamental disconnect between the two groups. The Federation representatives had come offering what they considered the ultimate prize: full membership in Galactic Civilization's most prestigious organization. They couldn't comprehend why anyone would refuse such an opportunity. Dr. Marcus Webb, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up. "Counselor Vextar, may I ask what you think we've been doing out here for the past year?" "Establishing survival colonies," Vextar replied. "Building infrastructure to support your exiled population. Struggling to maintain technological civilization without Federation support." Marcus exchanged glances with Sarah before activating a holographic display that showed the true scope of Alliance space. The Federation delegation stared in amazement at images of thriving worlds, advanced research facilities, and most shocking of all, species working together in ways the Federation had never achieved. "We haven't been surviving, Counselor," Marcus explained. "We've been building something new, something better." The images showed human children learning alongside young aliens in integrated schools, research laboratories where human creativity was combined with alien expertise to achieve breakthrough innovations. Colonial settlements where different species had created hybrid cultures that were richer than anything they had achieved separately. The Alliance currently includes active representatives from 178 different species, Sarah continued. Some are former Federation members who chose to join us. Others are species that were never contacted by the Federation, civilizations we've encountered during our expansion into unexplored regions. The implications hit the Federation delegation like a physical blow. Not only had humanity succeeded in creating an alternative to Federation civilization, they had created something that was attracting more species and growing faster than the Federation itself. This is